Here we go. Meeting's being recorded. Awesome. So I know a bunch of you guys have been working. I've just completed my first few weeks of being back on like a real show. And it's intense. And so, I mean, we can talk about how that stuff's evolving, how everyone's feeling. In my case, we started our first 2 days, the COVID and the health and safety aspect of things. People really weren't following the procedures, and health and safety wasn't being reinforced. And then over a weekend, they brought in a whole new team, and now we are, full on face masks and face shields from call time to wrap. So it's been a lot. Like, it was a lot for me to take in because I've been hearing everyone else talking about working and how much it is and how hard it is and all the challenges with that. And it's real. But I will say, since that changed, things have been, well, as safer, I guess. People are following protocol, and we're all kind of making it work. So in all, feeling very okay about it, but very tired. So I guess I'll open it out with kind of, how is everyone doing now that, a bunch of you guys have been on shows much longer than I have. How's everybody feeling? Oh, hey, Alex, you made it.
Hey, yeah.
How are you? Are you still in quarantine?
Yes, I am.
Oh, jeez.
Looking forward to getting out of it. Almost there.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be back in the US. So
Nice.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's been a trip.
Did you go to California? Hello, everybody.
Hey, Mary. No, they've pushed that back into the new year. So
your beard's longer.
Yeah, it happens when you just don't cut it. It just grows. Who would have thought? But yeah, I'm doing well. I hope everyone else is doing well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, as I was saying, I think before you sign on, I just went back to a show, and I've been so busy the last few weeks that I don't really have anything prepared. This is more kind of a hi, how are you? And wow, working during this pandemic is real. It's a challenge.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe people can answer it. So I've been solely with one company on commercials. I've been very safe. We went from May to now, and we didn't have one COVID case. So I was very happy. But I'm starting to get some calls for shows, not, and I'm going to take a full-time show, but maybe second unit. So what's going on with second unit? What's happening? What would be the protocol? What's going on? Can anybody answer that?
As far as I know, Gail, every single show out there is totally different. Echo everything that Rachel said. It's a little bit anxiety provoking. It's a little bit scary. It's a little bit, there is some level of nice to see people at work and nice to be employed and nice to have the distraction of the engagement of our job. But holy cow. I'm sure we all have a different horror story to tell. Somebody said the other day, and I'll just put it this way, we have the facade of protocol.
Would you need to be tested before, like, a second unit day? Say you get a call for a second unit day, like the day before, what happens?
They need more time than that. They'll probably, most of the shows I've heard about, there are rapid tests, but I think that's only when you're already in the mix, that you have to have the PCR test first. I don't know, anybody else?
I think, like, in terms of day playing and second unit work, that's, from what I've experienced, it seems to be normal. I came into day play for Diane's show, and I came in and did a rapid test that morning. Yeah, and where they get the results within, it was very precise, 13 minutes. And then after that, I could sort of step onto stage and sort of like, work with the protocols, but, it was just like normal. It was kind of, I was called the day before, and then it was all kind of sort of set up. And then, I did that day, and that was it. Kind of, very normal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly possible to do rapid testing, and it is fast. I mean, within an hour. And they did that on my show multiple times for different people for different reasons. But they can also get a normal turnaround time of like 24 hours if was the normal testing that we had on my show, and I got tested every single day. So it's really just a question of will. Do they want to do it? And I would say to anybody who's in the position where they're being asked to work, but they're not wanting to give them enough time to test, that like, well, if you want me to work on it, then you're going to need to test me in time. I mean, I think that's just kind of fair. And I mean, it's also not 100% like that, you're going to be able to catch all this stuff, because like my show, we had many infections happened over the course of it. I count myself incredibly lucky that I got out of the show without being infected. Our DP, our director, our director's assistant, our writer, we had a producer, we had multiple drivers, we had 5 armorers that all got it, and they got really sick. Multiple people in the office and other departments, set deck. But I mean, just director, writer, DP, and director's assistant, these are people that I'm around all day, every day.
Did they shut down at all for any of these infections, or for any time?
Yes, they did. It was
How
a week.
long?
It was a week for both the DP and the director. And I was in I guess with the director's assistant, it kind of was around the same time as the director, as was the writer, so it kind of all coincided. The DP was the first one, and so that was its own thing. But yeah, there was 2 weeks we were down, and 2 weeks where I was quarantined in my hotel room and couldn't leave or do anything.
With the timing of these infections, Alex, do you think they all gave it to each other, or do you think they got it independently?
I think with the DP and the director, I think that those were separate occasions because they were at separate times. And I think that, and I'd say our DP, it was probably very good about not going out, not doing anything, having a mask on. But I think his driver ended up getting it, and maybe he got it from his driver, or maybe it was vice versa. I don't know. But our DP was one of those people I thought like, wow, like, if he got it, then any of us could get it, because he was really good about protocols and really trying to hold the production accountable to being safe. And of course, he's like the first one.
Was this a mixture of like local crew and like sort of crew coming in from the US? Like how much of this was like full quarantine crew, and how much of this was like local people?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we started out in Croatia, and so it was a Hungarian crew, predominantly Hungarian crew, and supplemented with crew from the UK and the US. And when we all went to Croatia, we were sort of in a bubble. They basically rented out an entire hotel, and we were just at that hotel, and the hotel staff were staying at that hotel. And so it was basically a bubble for that first like month. And then we went back to Hungary, and now people are going back to their families and seeing their friends, and it was a much less contained sort of system that they had. And then they tried to, once the DP got sick, then they changed how everything was being done, and all the Hungarian crew, I think, that was in the red zone, which was to say anybody that could be allowed on set at the same time that an actor would be there without a mask. All those Hungarian crew ended up being put up into a hotel, and they were not allowed to leave that hotel for the remainder of the entire production. And so even once that was in place, the director and other people still got sick, but like they took it more seriously at that point. And yeah, no one left or did anything. It was a ton of fun.
Did all of the infections happen in Hungary, or did you also have infections in Croatia?
It was all in Hungary.
Yeah.
I mean, we had infections on the production while principal photography was going on in Croatia, but they were infections that were happening either in the office or while people, building stages. But all that was in Hungary. So yeah.
None of the talent got sick?
None of our main talent did. We did have one actress that I was there for a day, and she got sick, and then they had to like test all the actors that were around her multiple times with like these 1 hour rapid tests, and they did multiple of them and all of them were good. So no, none of her. That was the one actress that ended up getting sick. So I guess we were lucky.
Alex, what were your protocols on set? I don't know if you were on earlier, but we started in our health and safety was very loosey-goosey. After some complaints were made and also our director was contact traced, we now have to wear our masks and face shields from call to wrap.
Okay, well, I guess we were not required to wear face shields, but we did have masks, and we were always required to have them at all times that we were on set, and was highly recommended that we have them on anytime that we were outside of our hotel room, which I did. I just lived in a mask pretty much all the time. I'd say in Croatia, the protocols were a little bit more lax because no one had really been infected on set yet, and also because everyone existed in the same bubble. It was just a lot easier to maintain. And Dubrovnik was also a much smaller city. There's like nobody there. It was kind of amazing to see. It was like this medieval city with a population of medieval times, really, with no tourists. So that was kind of special. And then once we got back to Budapest, then the protocols kind of changed, and they increased the number of the people on the COVID team, and like they all got these very high visibility red jackets, and they were much more firm in policing us in terms of keeping our masks on and keeping distance from one another. And I think they did a pretty decent job. I mean, some of these people were probably as young as like 20 years old, and they're coming up to executive producers and the director and telling them to, back off with no problem. And everybody did, because everyone wants to be safe. So
Would you say you were following like the sort of US protocols, or like because this was an international production, was it kind of more based on what they were doing in each country?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably pretty close to the US, because it was sort of following under Lionsgate's protocols. So it was pretty much that. And I guess I'd say that they tweaked things as they needed to as we went. But they were kind of figuring it all out as they went. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. I will say that when we were getting ready to leave, there's no schedule to test us once we got back. And I told them that, I thought that should really happen. And they're like, we'll look into it. And I ended up talking to a bunch of crew and saying like, okay, well, they said they're looking into it, but I think we should all probably make some noise. And so we talked to our health and safety supervisor and health and safety manager and said like, well, it's kind of bullshit that we're not going to get tested as soon as we leave. Like our lives just don't matter anymore as soon as principal photography is over. It seems it's kind of a bad message to send. And they're like, you're right.
I thought you needed to have a test within 72 hours before you returned to the US.
No, you do. But I mean, once we were back, so like I'm being tested once I'm back in the US, which they were not willing to do initially until we complained about it. And now they are. So
for shooting, Alex? You were still shooting when you were coming back to the US? Or was it just like for going home?
No. I mean, so yeah, I got tested before I had to like get on my flight,
Right.
and had to provide that information. But once I'm back, to provide tested, like assuming I got infected on the plane or, you know, something like that, that they were still accountable for that. So
For how long, Alex? You've been home a week.
yeah, so I think I'm supposed to find out on Monday if I.
You've not been tested yet since you got
No,
home.
I have. I was tested yesterday.
And do you expect you'll be tested again, or was that it, the one time?
No, I had 2 tests this week, last one being Friday, and I'm waiting to hear back from both of them. So the health and safety supervisor said that basically after that amount of time, the virus should have had enough of a viral load that it would show up in a test. And so he felt comfortable that that would be safe.
Rachel, I had intended on communicating this to, or ask the office to communicate this. I haven't even had a chance to talk to Colleen about it yet. It's a little bit of a sidebar, but just not to interrupt where we are, but I think it's important that as many people know this as possible. For any of us that were working over the Thanksgiving break, I don't know about you guys, but we were all given a take-home test that we had to, it was a spit test that we had to administer ourselves. It wasn't one that you had to be, you know, witnessed. You just did it yourself. You put the sample in an envelope, and then you had to get it to a FedEx place by 2 p.m. on the Friday after Thanksgiving. And they had originally said that they would it would be $20 because we didn't have to go anywhere. We just did it at home. But the night before our last day, so that Tuesday night, 52 sent out an email blast to all their members to say that it's not $20. It's $20 if they're going to come pick it up. If you actually have to go somewhere, it's $250. And so production is fighting that. NBC Universal is fighting that. And all of the other locals have filed a grievance. And so for any of you that were in that situation where you actually had to go somewhere to drop off some test, speak to Colleen, and I think each local has to file their own grievance. And who knows, I mean, you know, it might be months before it's actually, whatever the verb is, satisfied or settled, I guess is the word. But anyway, just be aware of that. I didn't want to forget to mention that because it was like, I've heard not, you know, we've heard nothing from 161 about this situation.
Was it, my husband's show did that, and he's NBC Universal. I wonder if it's just that studio, because I'd asked about it on our show if it was something we were doing over Christmas break, and they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm under Disney.
Well, we have to show up on the 2nd for a test. We have to go to the testing site, but for that they will have to pay the $250. But it was all about this at-home thing,
right?
Having to deliver a sample yourself. I mean, we have people on our crew that live kind of boondocky upstate, and I mean, our first AC on the 8 camera drove 160 miles round trip to get to the closest FedEx place.
Oh no.
I didn't have that issue in Chelsea, but it's still, it's the point of it that you had to leave home and go do something on a day you are not at work. Oh.
No, of course. The kicker to that is on my husband's show, they scrapped all those results.
What do you mean, scrapped them?
So they, if I'm understanding it correctly, enough people forgot to do it or missed the deadline at FedEx
Wow.
that they didn't have the results turned around in time, so they decided to just scrap it, and everyone had a double rapid test coming in the Monday after.
Anyone who hadn't gotten their test in to FedEx was notified that they had to rapid test on that Monday, but the predominant majority of the crew did do it, and and we've only been paid the $20.
And can I bring up something new also in the commercial world? I know not many of you are commercials, but there's a new AICP protocol thing about testing for commercials. Oh, and you're gonna love this. You know what they're paying us to get tested for? $175. So remember how you were complaining about the 250? Commercials, they're giving us $175. And when I brought it up to Colleen, she says, you know, we had no say in it. So this is across the board. It's 3 days before a job. I'm not sure how in the world it's going to work if you're working 3 different jobs in a week. You know, it's got different levels, whether you're with talent, whether you're not. You could go 7 days if you're not with any talent, you know, less days with talent on the set. So there's a whole new thing, and hopefully the local will send out what it is. I'm hoping.
So that's even if it's a union job, the IATSE, I mean, the,
This is union jobs. This is 175 that they're going to pay us to get tested.
because I just did a commercial and I put 250 on my time card, but I haven't received my check yet, so I haven't heard about that.
Right, this is a new thing that is going into effect January 1st. So it hadn't gone into effect yet, but this is starting up in January.
Everybody, please take a look at your pay stubs as well, because if you go in for a day and you get that $250, it's make sure it doesn't say on your pay stub that it was a work day. And I called Colleen about this because mine was saying that it was a work day, and I felt like it was putting a fine point on it. But as far as I'm concerned, if I don't get my benefit hours for that, then it is not a work day. It's one thing to be taxed for the 250, much like I would for, you know, maybe something else, but I want my benefits if you call it a work day. So just be mindful of that.
And how does that affect unemployment? Say you have to go 3 days, it's the week before you're working, right? Say you got to go on a Friday, you're working on a Monday or Tuesday.
Mhm.
How does that affect unemployment for the week of the test and you weren't working?
Well, that's, to me, that's something that they've got to work out what this is. I just, my position on it is that if you're going to pay me the $250, that is really more of an inconvenience in order to do it, but it is not a work day. That's the way I view it. And I know that on my pay stubs, because I don't always have 5 days, it would say 5 of 5, even if one of those was getting the COVID testing. Now, am I interpreting this wrong? And Colleen said, no, it should not say that. It should not say 5 of 5. It should say 4 of 5 if one of those days was a COVID test. So, you know, if people disagree with me on that, I'd like to hear your reasoning. Possibly that the unemployment issue might be in there, that you were trying to get days for unemployment. But to me, it doesn't make sense to take. They didn't give us even a half day of benefit hours for the 250. So I just don't want it called work. Otherwise, I want those hours.
However, Sean, I
Yeah.
think for unemployment, and I'm speaking of unemployment only, if they take your taxes out, unemployment counts that as working. So it's different than the union, and I don't know how it would, but if you have taxes taken out, unemployment will count that as working.
Yeah.
Am
I
I
have
wrong,
an issue
Mary?
with it.
Even though what Linda says is true by and large, I'm sorry that I don't remember where it was, but I feel 90% certain that when this document when all of this testing stuff first started, it was articulated that the testing payment would not affect unemployment. And that if you are unemployed for the week and Friday you're going in for a test for a job for the following week, that would not affect your unemployment.
Well,
I
then-
feel certain that I
Mary,
read that.
Mary, if that's true, and I'm sure what you're saying is accurate, then the accountant people have got to do with your pay for that day the same thing as they do with your kit fees.
Well, it's
It has-
all more important that the point Sean's making, that it not be reflected on a pay stub from the payroll company as a workday.
I agree wholeheartedly, but what I'm saying is, in order to make that happen, accounting has to put that in the same column as your untaxed kick fees versus the, any other thing that gets taxed. That's what I'm saying. That unemployment does not differentiate if you're taking taxes out or not. That's my, that's what I know of having gotten unemployment. That's all I'm saying. And I think Mary is accurate, but it's keeping the accounting different.
And I would ask that anybody who is working to look at that and get your own assessment of what this kind of thing is, because I want to make sure that we as a local have an understanding of what that is, because as I've stated already, please don't call it a work day if I don't get my benefits. That's my point.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's just, we have to deal with how unemployment sees it. And I don't know if anybody has over the years had issue with them when you do 1099 work, which is, they don't call that working dependent. So it's just how it's a state or local, whatever it is, unemployment thing.
I think as long as you're not, in New York anyway, like earning more than whatever it is it $504 that week, then you can still claim unemployment. So if you were doing 2 commercial jobs and you had to get 2 tested, then you could still answer that question as no and get your full benefits of unemployment. But, as soon as you tip over that number, then, you wouldn't be eligible to claim. If
Well,
that
it also prorates it.
I think they prorate it.
They do
Yeah.
prorate per day and how much you take off.
Part of my concern about this is I've said throughout, I've been concerned all through this COVID stuff that with our health insurance, at some point the coffers could run dry and they could change their position. And I don't know if anybody's aware of what happened with SAG and SAG-AFTRA, but lots of people have lost their health insurance. Just a blanket decision, and a lot of the people who were like my father-in-law is in a position where he has been retired for a long time from AFTRA, but they're just cutting people off if they're no longer working or making the amount of payment larger. And we've had this experience. I've talked to some background people who are SAG background people who are in a terrible position trying to get their hours in order to qualify now. I think that could happen with our insurance too, if the coffers start running dry and a decision could be made without us.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that my bank is still staying strong.
Yeah, I know another actress who told me that just the other day, that she's 78, and she told me that SAG and AFTRA have cut off their pension, and she was a fully funded actress who worked like forever and gets great residuals, so it's not the issue. But yes, that's what SAG and AFTRA did, cut off their retirement benefit of health insurance, which is shocking.
They cut off the retirement benefit?
How could they do that? Legally, they can't. They have to, the government insures it, doesn't it? They
I-
would get something.
I do not know, but my friend who lives in the building, actually, you worked with her, Marcia Jean Kurtz, for years, and she said that is what they did.
Yes, and it did happen, and a bunch of actors are suing
Shocking.
as well they should,
Mhm.
but they shouldn't be in the position of having to sue, excuse me, that their union for this poor decision.
Right.
I think that if we see this kind of thing happen, we should see the writing on the wall and be very aware. So just we need to be conscious.
Can we trust the MPI? They just gave this prescription contract to CVS, which has been as recently as January of 2020 brought up for charges for unfair labor practices. And this is who they gave our prescription to. And
Right.
now going forward from January, you can't go to your independent pharmacy now. You can only go to the behemoth anti-union company, CVS. So I wouldn't trust them as far as I could spit.
Right, and so a decision could be made, that could affect a lot more of us. We already know how difficult it is to, if you're not on an episodic or something like that, in order to get your enough hours. And I sat shaking this almost entire time going, my bank has been safe. My bank has been safe. I've never qualified for any of those gifts that they were giving. But now that we're back, we're going to start seeing that get chopped off. And I don't want to be in that position of even with the gift of the 6 months of Cobra, they could change their mind about that. That's all very precarious.
If no one has anything else about this to say, I wanted to point out something about face shields. Everyone good on this topic?
Yeah, let's go for it. Face shields. You're
Yeah, so Alex was saying that face shields weren't required on his job, and it just worries me that people don't know the face shield is to protect you, to keep the actors who are maskless from spitting in your eyes, basically. So, even, the feature that I finished up before Thanksgiving, they got really loosey-goosey about face shields. But I have some goggles that have readers in the bottom. So those are perfect because I need readers to read my script. But just know that protects you. It's not protecting everybody else. So even if they're not requiring it, personally, I wear it. And then I wanted to tell you guys about the horrifying commercial that I did a few weeks ago. It was for All Elite Wrestling. And they have their own studio. And we have to go through the building. First of all, they said when I was hired, I asked whether your COVID protocols are going to test us twice. I'm like, awesome. So we have to do a rapid test within 3 days of shooting. And then the morning of shooting, we get tested. We get there, and it's the Wrestling Federation's people who are testing, and they're doing an antibody test. And all that does is say if you've been infected in the past. So I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Then I asked the COVID supervisor, who was a set medic, for a wristband for zones. And she said, no, production's not letting us do any zones. I asked about zones, and production won't let me put people in zones. So I'm already getting worried. I go through the building to get out to the stage, the wrestling ring, and there were people all over the place with no masks on, wardrobe, makeup, everything. So I'm holding my breath and racing through there. And I ask about it, and they said, we're fine. We test. They think they're in their own little wrestling bubble. All of the crew that works at the Wrestling Federation, they just go maskless. They are just comfortable with testing. Who knows what people do, when they're off work. You guys know that,
What state is this?
This was in Jacksonville, Florida. And so, I had to I had asked for my own monitor before, when I got hired, and I was promised my own monitor, and I didn't have my own monitor. And the director, of course, wants to be right in the middle of all the action where all these wrestlers and everyone else are coming and going without masks. So I had to go up to the producer and say, no, we need to change the situation. I need a monitor, and I need to be away from all of this. So that was that, and I told Colleen about it, but they have got, that's got to, IA's got to be doing that crew as well. It's a stage crew. So I don't know what's up with that, but that was my horror recently.
Isn't this the same thing that's going on with the Golf Channel right now, where they are not taking the precautions? It's been reported quite a lot, from the IA newsletters and everything, that this kind of stuff is just it's abominable that these productions are getting away with this. This is a serious thing. I don't understand. I'm sorry, Deb.
Well, I went and got myself tested after that. I've actually had self-tested, went and got tested twice since then. So I'm negative. I'm good. I didn't get anything, but it wasn't a fun working situation.
How many days were you in that environment?
Luckily, it was just one day. Otherwise, I may not have come back.
I worked on a Lifetime movie recently, and I had just finished off of a History Channel TV show, and they were great. Anytime the actors were in the vicinity, anyone would have to wear the goggles and the mask when they were maskless. And then I went on this Lifetime movie, and I was like, oh, everything's gonna be great. This is gonna be super. And the very first day, they're like, rehearsal's up, and the actors don't have masks on. I'm like, what's going on? And it was just the first part was a 17-day thing. They were working us 6 days a week, and it was non-union, but it was exhausting. And some of the crew even mutinied, because that's all the power you have when it's a non-union show. But it was bad. It was very bad.
Yikes. I know on ours, day 2, our director was contact traced. So she was the only one identified, and she basically directed via text and Q-take for the better part of a week until they allowed her to come back after testing her regularly every 12 hours.
How did that work? Like, did they find an efficient group for that to work well, or did it never really work well?
It wasn't terrible. Our showrunner stepped in her stead, and basically she had text threads going with me, the DP, another EP, and the showrunner individually. And then there was a pecking order. So if she was trying to get a message to one person and they didn't respond in a timely fashion, it kind of trickled down until someone replied. It slowed things down a bit. Our DP is a little slow, so I don't know. It wasn't great, but it's disjointed and it's weird. And
how many days did that go on for?
3. And then they brought her back with like no fanfare, and people were a little wigged out because there was no one addressed the fact that like she was contact traced and she just kind of showed back up, and no one's like, well, she's been tested and she's negative and we're all cool. Like, it took the better part of her first day back for people to be like, are you supposed to be here? The communication I'm finding in general, it's just been terrible with all of this.
That sounds like what happened on Manifest. I think their director tested positive and then ended up directing via Q-take with with a representative on set, the showrunner. I think. This is what I heard secondhand, but so.
All right, so we're checking off the list of all the horror stories. Anything positive coming out of anybody's work? No, okay, that's working a pandemic for you.
I missed the last meeting, so I wasn't able to tell you guys about this. I don't know if you saw, I posted a picture on the Script Supervisors Facebook page about on the feature I was on the day that I had a sore throat. And I worked out of my car. So my car was about 200 yards from set. The COVID supervisor put cones around my car, 10 feet perimeter. Everyone had to stay away, and they'd have to come deliver me a walkie-talkie and Comtex and leave them there. And then I'd go out and get them. And I'd be, they escorted me, a COVID person would have to come escort me to the bathroom if I had to go to the bathroom. They'd come in his suit and escort me to the bathroom, and then go in and sanitize it when I was done and escort me back until I got a negative test that came back later that night. So that was, I thought that was positive that they were able to, we were able to do a workaround to get me to work, because we wouldn't have been able to bring in anybody to replace me.
That was a great post, Deb. I really loved the way that your car was kind of sort of set up for that.
Yeah, I have an SUV with 3 rows, so I was able to sit in the back row seats and put the second row seats down and have my iPad and my computer and everything, and then video assist put monitors right outside my back window, passenger door window. I kind of felt like I was at a drive-in movie.
All right. Well, it's a lot of innovative thinking, which is kind of nice to see. I don't know. Anything else? Holiday plans? Are you guys? Our show has been strongly urging that everyone stay home and not see anybody. Is anybody traveling? Is anybody else feeling that kind of stuff, or just are you going to test, or shows testing over the break?
We're going to test. We're going to test on the 2nd of January and also the 4th of January, and then return to shooting on the 5th. So
that's tight.
We were originally going to test on the 4th, have an idle day on the 5th, and come back to set on the 6th. But because of the way we did Thanksgiving, having rapid tests every single day, they felt like we could test on the 4th and go back on the 5th. So we're not gonna take that. But I've decided not to travel. It just feels too risky.
Yeah. No, our show, gosh, I have to come back. They will only accept PCR tests, and we have to do a whole week of PCR testing before we can go back to the stage to shoot.
By whole week, do you mean every day or just a week in advance of the shoot?
Just a week in advance. So right now Zone A's are testing 3 times a week, and we have a Zone B plus who I believe will test 3 times that week, and then Zone B is just once. Yeah. Well, we're not traveling. We're battening down because we're a family in 2 different shows. So to keep everybody working and safe, we're here.
Another question. I took that test, the course that that the union said we had to take, and it has on the thing for employees. Have people had to send that information to shows or something about that COVID prevention course?
I was surprised when we got that information from 161. In 871, they just added that course. That's where it came from, the Contract Services Administration, where you have, to take safety classes to be able to be on the roster. They didn't really, they said that everyone had to take it, but I don't know, A, who's keeping track of that, or B, what happens if you don't.
Right. Does it go to shows, or shows requiring that?
I have no idea. There was so little sketchy information there, except for the insistence that you had to do it. I don't know.
Gina, I mean, Gail, I took my I sent my copy to Rafina.
Mhm.
And
did.
I also just sent my resume in for a couple of jobs, and I attached it to my email with my resume. Never heard back from them when, one way or another about it, but that's what I did with the certificate.
Right. It's pretty painless. It's just, I was
How
just
long did it take,
curious.
Gail?
It takes around 40 minutes, I guess. They give you a couple of little quizzes during, it's sort of if you ever took the defensive driving online, it's similar to that effect, but they do the whole thing on video, and then you just have to take a few separate quizzes, but you have to be there because you have to press the next button for every little thing. So you have to be right on top of it.
Did they
And
offer
it-
you, does it come with any $20 an hour pay? Because that's what they do in California.
No, it does not.
I took
But
one
it
in
is,
California because there was a deadline. It's now been extended, but the deadline was the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and I took it the day before the deadline, and got my $20 check almost on the same day that the article came, that the email came from 161 saying that we had to do the course, with no mention of the $20 an hour.
No mention.
Mm.
There's no mention of that. And nowhere on the website.
I think I'll bring it up with Colleen on Monday. But I haven't taken the course yet. I'm still waiting to actually get sent the test. I filled out the account, but it's not automatic. So I'm waiting for them to send me what I need.
it's very easy. But you can't skip ahead. Even if you think you know something, the video has to completely finish before you can click to the next part. So you're kind of locked into the 45 minutes that it will take.
Well, 45 minutes. I've spent a month in quarantine. I mean, I can make it 45 minutes.
Exactly.
It just doesn't seem right that, it's not the same for everybody, that the East and West Coast is not the same.
Yeah.
If they're going to require it, they should, $20 is not that big of a deal, but it's just the point of it.
Can I ask a question back to working on set? I missed the last meeting also. I'm not even sure what it covered, but one of my major difficulties is the fact that we shoot on location a lot and they can't, there's no way for them to find a catering space that's where we can socially distance. So they just work through, and I'm happy to get our prevailing rate meal penalties, but even if food is brought to me, there's still no time to get offset to eat. And I just end up starving until I get home after the long van ride. Has anybody come up with a way to deal with that? Like to get a 5-minute break? I find I'm just eating 2 bites of the Cliff Bar on my way to the bathroom. That's the only time I can get.
I'm in the same boat. I haven't found a solution yet.
We're working out at Kaufman, and they're telling us that for any time we need to go eat, that the space that they have earmarked for that is this basement space that's literally on the other side of the building from where we work. And I mean, I timed it. It takes like almost 4.5 minutes to walk there from the side of the building we're on. It's not, and I brought it up to our first AD on the COVID team, that it's not a tenable space. I mean, it's not like anyone who is working on set can go to that space and use it to eat. It would actually take almost longer to walk there and walk back than it would take to eat that, half a sandwich or drink that cup of soup. And the AD is a guy who's really good and really smart and really, always keeping the crew's best interests at heart. And he just said to me, Mary, you just need to find a time to break away. If you're having trouble, come to me. And then, we're in the heat of the shoot where You know, this is
Mhm.
not a show where they've added extra days to accommodate the slowdown of COVID. And yeah, I'm in your same boat. I just, I'm, I, yeah, I can't even get a cup of tea.
Um,
I find that when the director is eating, then that's usually a good time for me to eat too. I just did a movie where we did like 10-hour continuous days. It was in England, so like things work a little bit differently there, but normally they would break for like 1 hour. So we did 10-hour continuous days without breaking, but then we kind of did end up having a break because we would basically have a sort of 15-minute window where people would sort of, you know, eat the lunch that was like brought to set, you know, and then that might not be the whole crew, that might be sort of certain, you know, departments, you know, maybe like hair, makeup, wardrobe would sort of like eat first, and then sort of shooting crew that was sort of just, you know, doing the shot would sort of get there sort of like 10-15 minutes like right afterwards. But
What's
there was a couple of times where, you know, like for instance, me and the DP, because of losing the light, you know, we kind of didn't get to sort of like take our sort of like, you know, quick gobble like the rest of the people. But on the most part, there was always a good sort of opportune moment, you know. But whenever I saw my director eating, I was like, that's when I'm going to eat too.
And was there a physical place for you to do that safely?
Well, we were shooting outdoors a lot, so you know, if we were shooting at a lot of sort of manor houses, so then like, you know, people would just sort of step outside, and you know, it was definitely a lot of like sitting on boxes, and this was like still in sort of like September, August, you know, so we could still sit on the grass or the lawn. But yeah, there's, you know, I mean, it rains a lot in England, you know, and there was like an appalling amount of just like standing in the rain eating, which I was just like shocked at. You know, but it's like people just, I mean, I would sort of see sort of like ACs, you know, like crouched, not even sitting, just like crouched on the grass as there was like light rain, just sort of like eating. And I would get indigestion just like watching them trying to eat. So yeah, that was not good. But you know, the times when we were like at a location for a longer period of time, like for several days, then, you know, I saw a lot of people just like sitting on the gate of their truck and eating, that kind of thing.
On my job, people go to their department rooms, and no one on the COVID team actually polices, you know, that 5 people are eating in a room that's less than 400 square feet. They just, you know, turn a blind eye. It's not only the time, it's the fact that there is no place. And the only place there is outside. And as the weather's getting colder, that, you know, I mean, we're eating cold food. Why shouldn't we be cold while we're eating cold food?
At Silver Cup, they have different designated rooms for the different zones to go and eat. And when you get to the room, you see the tables are spaced 6 feet apart, and the chair is always on one side of the table, so nobody's facing each other. You're always facing somebody else's back. And there's even a sign up that says no talking during lunch. So it's sort of like being at a silent retreat when you're eating. A lot of times you can
that
also sit
also for
outside.
like in between, like
That's for lunch. That's for lunch. So we do break for lunch. But if there is, you know, sandwich o'clock or something like that, people just go outside and eat on the sidewalk. You know, not on the stage, but outside. And I bring my own breakfast, so I just go outside and eat my breakfast outdoors. So
I've seen 2 different lunch table options. One where it's like the skinny long table and one person sits at each side. This other job was super weird. They had plastic barriers, so they'd put people, you could sit close to each other, but there were these big plastic things, and that was interesting. And it was, I like talking, so I was happy to have some like relaxing communication with other crew members and being able to see what they look like with the plastic.
It still baffles me how across the board things are just so varied from one production to another, and that there's no standard protocol and procedures and all of that. You know, for example, my zone, my red zone and the yellow zone and the green zone and the orange zone and the purple zone and the whatever in my show versus Rachel mentioning her zone A. And, you know, on some other show, the zone near the actors is the green zone, but in my show, it's the red zone. And I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Can I just say, all of this would be, I still feel like I could deal with all these difficulties much better if there were school 5 days a week for my daughter and after school. And I'm just trying to screen that they're online, so they're texting during school and having to keep track of that and make sure they're not, I mean, first of all, try them to not do it. And second of all, to have it appropriate. They're, 10 years old. It's just been such a giant stress. So I feel there are a lot of problems, but I'm happy to be tested every day. That's a good, when we were shut down for 2 weeks twice, it did feel weird to not be tested and not know, but that's been one positive thing. And can I also just say about back to the CVS thing, 2 experiences in the past is I think CVS sometimes has a far inferior generic brand, and I've had 2 bad results. One was my cat, actually. I was reminded by Deb Walter's beautiful cat there. And one was something that I was taking. So you might just want to have if you're relying on a certain medication, have your doctor check that box. That I think there's a box that says that you can't fill it generically. I'm not sure if it's the case with everything, but it's just been my personal experience a couple of times.
I've asked Pauline to look into it because even though she is a trustee on the MPI benefit fund, she had no knowledge of the CVS action that was happening. When I got the notification from MPI, I called her, and she said it was news to her and she would look into it. She's a trustee on the fund.
I think something must have happened with Express Scripts because the city program also did that, my husband's program. So I don't know, they both have gone to the CVS program, but do you think that we're only allowed to go to CVS or can we go to other places?
Cannot.
Do you think now that there are vaccines that productions will push starting new productions until crew actually gets vaccinated, or do you think we'll continue the way we have been, starting up with these same procedures?
I think they'll continue the way they have been, because even if people get vaccinated, that only means you don't get symptoms. It doesn't mean that you can't transmit it. So you're still supposed to use your PPE.
Mm-hmm.
Although I read an article in the paper yesterday about it's legal for an employer to require that you get vaccinated.
Well, that's why I was thinking that, because with all these productions saying how expensive it is to do all of this, if they just said that crew has to be vaccinated before they start up again to reduce their own costs associated with it. And I know I'm looking for work after we wrap the season, and I'm wondering, am I going to, even shows that say they're going to be starting up quickly now that the vaccines, I'm wondering, will they just take that opportunity and say, everybody prove that you've been vaccinated, and then you can crew up, with us? I'm just wondering if that could happen.
Donna, are you thinking that then they won't spend the money on testing?
That is what I do think could happen, because we have such varied things from show to show already. As it is, I get tested 3 days a week, and I'm in the red zone, with actors and directors. Other shows are tested every single day. We're having these different things. I do think that there could be productions that then said, well, if they're vaccines, then we can abandon, these other practices. We'll just demand that everybody who comes to work for us is vaccinated in order to save a lot of costs. So, I know that, like on our show, we're now only allowed to have 3 people in a 15 pass. And it used to be 4, but now they're including the driver as the 4th. So now we have lots more vans that are traveling. You just have to look at that and say, that's a lot more money that they have to pay to get all this crew, back and forth to other sets when we move. I can imagine a production saying, we don't want to spend that money anymore, but we do want our show to go into production. So now if we can put that on the potential crew person to get vaccinated before we even consider them, they will do that to reduce the cost. I'm just throwing it out there that could be a possibility, wondering if anybody else thinks that productions will do that. And will this up our comfort level, or will it create more anxiety? I don't know. I think we're all in such different places with it.
SAG is going to be the main, I think that's going to determine what goes on SAG, because it comes down to the actors feeling safe, and they're going to push whatever they're going to push whatever, they think is safe.
But
keep in mind something. Keep in mind something. Unless you're elderly or a first responder, you will not be able to get vaccinated till spring or summer. That's how this rollout is going.
Right.
So
but
things are going to have to stay as is until then.
But that's why I'm asking, do you think productions will push until crew is part of the group that can get
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to say, well, I want to do a movie, so I won't, everyone we hired to get vaccinated. I don't think it's going to work like that. I really don't. I think it's going to, they're going to keep with this group first, this group second, this group third, this group fourth. And maybe in 2022, you may have to show something that you've been vaccinated, because honestly, it's going to take all of 2021 to get everybody vaccinated. So I think right now, nobody's off the hook until at least another year.
But the point is that was made about the fact that even the vaccination, which will protect you from exhibiting symptoms or getting a bad case if you are exposed, it does not preclude you from becoming infectious. And as long as we work with actors that have to have no mask on when they're in a room with other people, I don't think that what's happening right now is going to be changed that much in the near future. And just,
Mary,
I'm sorry, I just say as a codicil to the CVS issue, I said with such definitiveness that no, you can't go to any other pharmacy. I only am going off an in-person conversation I had on the phone with someone who answers the phone at MPI. I have often had people at MPI that don't necessarily speak the truth or know what they're talking about, or they might even change it. But someone did say that to me. So anyway, back to the vaccination.
What I heard, the Pfizer vaccine is the one that could possibly transmit. They said that the Moderna vaccine, the second one, you wouldn't transmit. That's what they've been saying on about them. So
I read that about the Moderna as well.
yeah.
Well,
So-
that's what vaccines do. They protect you. And the point is to get everybody, a certain amount of people vaccinated, so you have the herd immunity. It's like the flu
Yes,
shot.
yes,
Not
that-
everybody gets a flu shot, but not everybody gets the flu either. And that's because of the herd immunity. So with this COVID-19, I heard that we may be required to get a booster every 2 years. You get the initial vaccine, and maybe in 2 years you have to go get a booster. It kind of works like the flu shot now. You know, the flu shot is basically a yearly booster to the initial vaccine. And if it mutates like the regular flu does, then we may have vaccines, boosters that may not be that safe, that may not be that protective, I should say. So yeah, we're kind of in a gray area now. We're kind of learning what's going on.
I don't think it's going to affect like scheduling, just because I think the forces of the business are more powerful, you know, in terms of like having actors cast and available, you know, like if all your actors are cast and available and then you want to shoot in this window of time, I don't think production would push just to make sure the whole crew has been vaccinated. I think like they want to make business if all the elements are in place. So
Yeah, and Sean, I think if people start getting vaccinated and feel comfortable about going to the theaters again, the studios are going to want to be cranking out some features to put in those theaters.
Absolutely. I just think that you're right about they want to make business, but they also want to make profits. And part of the overhead of all of this seems to have been, I hear lots of complaining from the producers. You know, this is costing us so much money. I'm like, but we're supposed to be safe. So I don't know how much yeah. So that was just a question of how everybody felt about that.
I think if it saves them a lot of money, they'll probably want to do it. And I don't know, they're very rich and powerful. I mean, the studios, like I don't know if they can get a special deal of, you know, getting vaccines early to all their crew and cast so that they can, you know, start shooting safely. I mean, if they could, then, and that would save them money, then I think they would do it.
Yeah.
I just don't know that they actually have that kind of access. I don't know what kind of power they have to pull something like that off, but I mean,
instead of spending $7 million to rent a luxury yacht for the cast and crew, they'll spend it on getting vaccines for everyone.
Right.
Well, they might complain about the extra costs, but a lot of productions are not actually doing things the same way. You're lucky enough to have multiple vehicles because of only 3 people to a van plus a driver. On my show, they elected to rent yellow school buses. So bouncing around in an old school bus going an hour out to Long Island or
how many people on the bus, Mary?
10 and a driver.
Oh my God.
And
Is there any ventilation? Like, do they
on.
open the windows and things like that?
Say again?
Do they open the windows or take any other?
They have people, I mean, I try to open the window whenever I'm there, and then inevitably someone complains because it's cold.
Put a coat on.
That's what I say.
Yeah, I worked at a studio in Atlanta on 2 different shows. And it used to be that studio was just packed with bands, you know, going all over the place. And if you flagged one down and said, hey, can you take me to such and such? Now well, I can only take people who work on this specific show, or a lot of shows just don't have bands at all. It's like, you walk the, 5 miles to crew parking because, we can't have bands out there, packed full of people anymore.
Well, I was also just going to make the point that we are in an industry where they make money hand over fist. So our industry has been extraordinarily profitable over the last 10 years. And all the people that are crying poverty about the additional costs of working in a pandemic are the ones who have chosen to go into production while we're in a pandemic.
Mhm.
So all of that chat in the spring about, we know this is going to cost more money and we are committed to spending the additional 30% of production costs to make this happen because it's important and we got to do it and we got to blah, 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 blah. Don't forget all the other stuff that was blah, 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 blah about 10-hour work days and, one crew at a time and all of the other social distancing protocols, which I don't know about other people's job. That is completely nowhere to be seen on my sets. We are literally on top of one another, and the grips are in there at the same time as the props and the electricians and the set decorators and the makeup and hair people.
Mm.
Yeah, some things haven't changed and they will not change.
So,
Yeah.
but
And,
I don't feel sorry for the producers. They have a ton of money.
And, first ADs try their best and they say, okay, everybody spread out. We're getting to, clumped up together, pick a corner and go there. But yeah, you're right. A company like Marvel can, take a little bit more of this cost than, a lot of and back in March, it took everybody by surprise, but I think now they're taking that into account that they're going to have tests. They're going to have, face masks and all this other stuff. And in a year, I think they'll just say, you know what, if you want gloves, you get to buy your own gloves and bring them. I think we're going to see a lot of these things become less and less important to production.
I wanted to
So many
say
other
something
things.
about something that
Mhm.
that I do. It's been very positive. I love my new heated vest.
Yes, I have one too.
I love it. I highly recommend.
What
And I
brand?
just, it's the Aurora.
I have a Aurora jacket. I want to get the
And I
vest.
got the vest so that I could wear it underneath everything, because all the reviews said that if you wore it just as the jacket itself, the battery could run down and wouldn't really work. So I just got the vest and I wear it underneath my coat. It is the best thing. It just keeps your core warm. It's not like a heated blanket that gets really hot. It just keeps your core warm, and I highly recommend it. It was the best purchase I made this year.
How long does the battery last?
On low, it's up to about 8 or 10 hours, but on high, it would go out in like 2 or 3, I think.
I think it's
But
6.
yeah, I've had it on. I had it on 2 weeks ago, and it was so cold in the wind. And then I went to lunch, I turned it off, and it wasn't as cold coming back. So I never even turned it back on, in the night. So it's when you really need it and you turn it on and off. And I don't turn it on as soon as I get to work. When I start feeling like my coat's not really enough, I turn it on. I love it. If you're cold ever, and I'm not somebody who necessarily gets cold, but that once your core gets cold, you can't get past it, So
Aurora,
I recommend it.
Rora, Aurora.
RORRO.
ORORO.
The cool
Thank
thing is you can have more than one battery. I think you can buy another battery for like $70 or something, and it also charges your phone. Like there's a little USB thing.
Right.
So I charge my phone on it constantly when I'm not
Yeah.
using the battery.
I'm
I got
telling
the
you, it's the
extra.
best purchase I made. I loved it.
What's
So,
I got-
also great is having heated insoles, Sean. If you haven't got those, you should look into those. Those are insoles that you could just like cut down to size to fit exactly, and then they kind of plug into a battery in the same way.
oh,
So like that was a game changer for me.
Who makes them, Sharon?
I mean, there's so many. You just go on Amazon, you look for heated insoles, and you'll find like 30 brands that look exactly the same, and they're pretty much all exactly the same. And I think they're about like, I don't know, $13 or something like that. So they're still pretty cheap. You can get ones that come with their own individual batteries, which I didn't want because I don't want to wear like a little battery on every foot. So I just got the ones that are just, it's just the insole with a wire. So I'm using my own battery. So when, in the cold, if you're wearing a double layer, just so the wire is not right against your skin and uncomfortable, then I would run it between your 2 layers and then, have my battery in a pocket or waist pack or something like that.
I've heard good things about the Aurora gloves, the heated gloves, because they've got the thinner layer and then they have the outer shell if you're like really digging in the snow. I want to get those.
does it have a thing that you can take the tips off? Because that's my whole thing, is being able to. I'm so glad we can still use paper because I do that for my notes. But I drop my pencils all the time because I can't feel them through my gloves. So constantly replacing. I'm just wondering if they.
It has the little thing where it's like, oh, you can touch your phone or something. I'm almost wondering if I could just cut a little slit and just like have a little hood on my finger when I want to use it.
Yeah.
There's also a very old school thing from Secretaries of Yore, little rubber tips for your finger. It was for paging through papers.
Right.
You'll find them. And I would just encourage people, like sometimes you can't get it any other way, but to do your research shopping on Amazon and then try and buy those things from other websites. Jeff Bezos makes $2,000 a second. And only his ex-wife is giving away any money, so.
I use that vest, the Aurora vest. I use it on a state. I bought it for locations, but I recently, last year, used it a lot on this cold, freezing set and the stage. And it just did it does the trick. And so you can use it inside too. It's wonderful.
I just had a question about something else. I had something appear on my paycheck recently that was like a little phone allowance. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't question what it was. But then somebody else in NYSSN said that they had got a little phone allowance, like literally $3 a day. And he said it was for reading sides on your digital device, like your phone, instead of getting paper sides. So I was just wondering, is that a thing now? Like, or, has anyone else seen that little line item on their paycheck?
It's absolutely a thing.
I've heard of other people getting an allowance for watching Q-Take on their iPads. Not that I've gotten that yet. Or a show that's given iPads to people to watch the Q-Take. So they're not all clustering around a monitor together.
Is that $3 a day too?
I don't know. But on my show, they've given people iPads.
For the phone, I think it's actually more having to do less about sides and more about the fact that no one's issuing call sheets. That all call sheets, all notification for work are coming digitally. They're now announcing on our set, the prelim has just been dropped. Check your phones.
I'm still getting a paper call sheet and paper sides.
Well, we got paper everything on ours.
Mm-hmm. So I don't feel like I can ask for $3 a day, but
Well, maybe
For the iPad, yeah.
production to production. I don't know.
But I also feel like if I'm using my iPad to look at the Q-Take, I've got the iPad in my kit rental list already anyway. So I don't know if I could ask for an additional $3 there. Or am I being
You can
too,
always ask.
yeah, that's true. probably being too honest.
Or use it to get a better kit rental next time, Diane.
Girl, we tried. We were fighting.
I know you tried. You know, I just,
just reading the chat. If anyone hasn't seen it, Leslie Zach has offered up some other options for heated vests. If anyone's interested. I know we're talking about DIT getting hundreds of dollars for a laptop. I know ACs who are getting, like loaders who are getting hundreds of dollars to have a laptop to do the film paper, the camera reports. So that's another fun one.
Again, my camera department was asking to get the subscription paid for that Zoe, whatever that Zoe thing is called, the Zoe
log
report. Yes, the Zoe log. And production refused to pay for their subscription, so they just said, "Forget it. We'll just do paper camera reports." So that's what we're doing again too.
That's what we did on my show. It was proposed as an idea that, you know, it would be safer and easier for everybody. And then, you know, I looked at it and it's like, you have to pay a subscription. It wasn't much, but I was like, oh, well, you know, I assume you're going to cover this because I'm not going to pay for it. And they're like, oh, well, we thought that you would. I'm like, well, no. And the camera guys weren't either. So then we just didn't do it. But it's just this assumption that we would pay for this thing. But yeah, I mean, it would have been great.
Yeah, our show pays for the Zolog for us, except when we have tandems and day players, they don't have it. So if they're on, you know, our C or D cameras, those ones have to be paper. So it seems like, well, can't, you know, there's got to be some other way of doing it. I thought, yeah, whatever. Then you end up with Zolog and paper.
Mm-hmm.
What was the point?
Right. Plus, going back to like, when was it? September, maybe maybe August. I interviewed for another show, and the interview was going well until at the end, the producer was saying, "So, how do you work? Digitally?" And I said, "No, I'm paper and pencil." And then the interview started to go south. So they wanted their show to be completely paperless. So that sort of went away. And then they emailed and said, we decided to go with somebody else who was completely digital. So.
Can you say what studio or network that was?
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up if I could find it. But again, it's like across the board, things are so varying and different. I mean, now here I am on my show completely working with paper like I always have been. And it's like, I just don't get it. I mean, I'm happy to be working paper because I feel more efficient and quick that way, but it's just, yeah.
I just wanted to ask Leslie, she mentioned something about getting a work from home bump. Can you just talk more about that? And what is the bump?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me know if it gets all robotic. Yeah, the accountant called me in the beginning because I did some prep before my show started, and then they've been releasing drafts, so I've been doing Saturdays. And he called me and he was like, "This time that you're putting in on Saturdays, is this, you're not going into the office or anything, you're working from home, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, we'll start putting work from home on your time card, and then I can process it as a work from home rate." So I'm getting basically an additional $10 a day, like any of the office staff who's using their own internet and stuff like that. So any of the prep that I'm doing on Saturdays, I'm now getting an additional thing for. And I have a kit rate in my deal where I have like a shooting kit rate and then a prepping kit rate, because I'm not using all my bells and whistles to prep. So I'm getting my normal box rental for prepping, and then it's also getting processed as a work from home additional rate
you're
for
getting-
like using my internet stuff.
So you're getting a work from home bump for the prep work, and you're getting a work from home bump for the kit too. Is that what you mean?
Well, it's like I mean, it's like the box rental. So like because I'm using my computer and my software and everything to do the prep, that's my box rental. But what Warner Media was offering people who have to work from home now and not go to the office, they just looped me into that since the prep I'm doing at home. I don't know if they're doing this for like the ADs who have to do stuff on the weekend or anything too, but the accountant is the one who was like, oh, well, if you're doing this from home, I can just put this line item on your paycheck. So that was pretty
That's
sweet.
good, because I've always worked from home when I prep anyway.
Exactly. I was like, no one ever goes into the office, so can't we get this all the time?
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that Warner is doing that when Warner who has fought, you know, over at Manifest, you know, getting higher rates on kit rentals and things like that. This is astonishing.
Yeah, I don't know if this is just because the accountant trying to help me out.
HBO, Leslie, I thought it was an HBO contract.
It is. It was just like all Warner Media shows, they've created a budget for work from home, but I feel like not every show or not every production is promoting it. And because I had a good relationship with the accountant from the outset, I was like, what's different? What's changing? And so this is something he clued me into, where like I wouldn't have even known to ask this.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So anyone else, just, you know, call your accountants and be like, do you have coding for a work from home? Because I've been working from home, and see what happens.
Well, it's another really important reason to have these sorts of meetings. Thank you again, Rachel, you know, to share that kind of information.
Yeah, the more we keep talking, the more we learn, clearly. Let me see. We're coming up on 2:30. I don't want to bogart everyone's weekends. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to chat about before we wish each other happy holidays and safe and healthy holidays and head off?
I kind of have a sort of on topic, sort of off topic thing. I know most of you guys know that I crochet, especially during the meeting, that just sit there. But I have made holiday gifts for anyone who would like them. They're called ear savers. When you're wearing the mask, you just put the straps on these little buttons instead of your ears, and they help not become folded Dumbo ears. So just send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat, and then I will mail you one, because I think they'll just fit in an envelope, so it'll be super easy instead of sending a package.
That is totally awesome. I love that. Thank you, Kim. Great. Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining in on these. I really, I fully admit I came underprepared today, and I've had a crummy internet connection, so I feel like I've missed half this meeting, but I love seeing everyone's faces. I love hearing everyone's stories. I love talking, and I love learning something new every month, because I feel like I truly have. So I guess to wrap this all up, thank you all. Thank you for hanging out through the pandemic and
One more
continue
thing.
being awesome. Yeah, please.
Sorry. In line with what Kim is saying, you know, a lot of people in other locals and so on have lost their jobs, specifically in the theatrical community, and many of them have tried to find ways of earning a living, just like IATSE and making things and so on. And the I.A.T.S.E theatrical wardrobe workers have a virtual craft fair this year. And I would encourage people, if they're going to buy things, If you could look up and see what can be purchased and help some of our brothers and sisters across the other locals keep food on the table by helping them, whatever they can do. So I know that if you look up local 764, they do have a virtual craft show. So that would be great if you could do that.
Thanks for that, Sean.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Happy holidays to everybody. Sorry.
Yeah,
to-
no,
interrupt.
that's great. All right, great. Well, again, thank you guys. Happy holidays, and I really look forward to
Have a
seeing
great
everyone.
holiday.
Be safe.
Take care. Be happy.
Thanks,
Healthy, and
guys.
safe.
Be well.
Peace out.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Happy holidays.
You as well. Be safe. All right.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry. I was cutting in and out. Like,
Oh no, you were awesome.
chunk where I was like, I came back